Welcome back to WVU's online percussion camp. We're going to continue with our technique of looking at world percussion instruments and hand percussion instruments, developing sound on each instrument that we look at. The next instrument we're going to look at is from West Africa. This is called the djembe. The djembe is indicative to all sorts of parts of West Africa, from roughly the west coast of Senegal all the way through Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, Ivory Coast. So it's a very ubiquitous drum to that region. Typically, this drum is going to be tuned much higher than what we've seen before. The head on this drum is either going to be a thin goat skin or from a thin to a thicker goat skin. Sometimes lead players will even have a thin cow on there as well to really get a high, bright sound. So to do this, we're going to have to take the principles that we've already looked at and modify them just slightly. That way we get a more indicative sound off of this drum in contrast to the congas and the ponlogo that we've already looked at. So first, to review, again, just posture, sitting up straight. You're at the edge of the chair. The drum is in front of you. Nice relaxed arm motion, keeping your arms down by your side. Motion always coming from our shoulders. This is always going to be true for all the drums that we look at. Again, the drum is going to be angled slightly in front of me, out away from me, keeping this nice and straight in each of my wrists, or in my arms and my wrists straight. That way it's a nice, comfortable position. The worst thing we could do is tip it this way and bend our arms, because now all of a sudden notice how much strain we're going to put on our forearms if I tilt the drum the opposite way. So we really want to make sure that that drum is angled away from us, keeping everything nice and straight as we go to play. So again, we have three sounds. We have our bass, we have our open tone, and our slap. To achieve these, many of these are going to be very similar. We're going to make some fine-tuning adjustments. The first, again, our bass sound, using the big part of our hand just off the center of our head. Making sure to keep our thumb out of the way. Now notice here, because this drum is so tight, I don't have to go clear to the center of the head to get that bass sound. I'm going to keep it on my side of the equator in terms of hand placement. That way my hand bounces off and that drum can resonate freely. For my open tone, I'm going to slide back, and again, still using from the knuckles on up, keeping all my fingers together. I'm going to strike right near the edge of the drum. So if I'm going to play that, keep that motion again, going from my bass to my open tone, everything is going to remain consistent. Now here, I'm going to slightly change the position of what I did before for my slap. If you remember on the ponlogo or the conga video, I slid my hand closer to the center, that way my fingertips were in contact with that nodal point. This can still be achieved. I can still get a slap there, but it's a really sort of a gunshot type slap. And it's a little bit more than I want. I really want a higher, brighter sound on this djembe. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep my hand here, and I'm going to really relax my fingers just in this position now, just moving them slightly. And with that, I'm going to think of my motion as really coming up off the drum. This allows my fingers to come off very quickly. I'm still using that same motion. The energy is still in my fingertips. But now I'm using sort of a secondary nodal point, right? Because the drum is so tight that those wavelengths are really small. So there's more and more nodal points between here, the center of the head, and the rim. So I'm going to find that one that's closer to the edge. And let my fingers come down right there. So the key difference to playing this drum with a very high tension on it versus, say, a conga or a ponlogo is really the direction of energy that you want to use on there. So while the other drums, on the congas especially, because so much of it is closed, I'm using that closed, dry, muted slap. I'm pushing the energy through the drum. Here on this djembe, because it's so tight, the energy has to come off the drum. So if I play that same exercise that we've used before, the 4 bass, the 4 tone, the 4 slaps, it's going to look a little bit different because my hands are going to come up a little bit higher, but I still want to keep everything the same in terms of placement and which part of my hand comes in contact. So we would have this: bass, tone, slap. So we have the same exercise, a little bit different in terms of where I want to direct that energy to go. Another thing that's slightly different about this drum that you might see versus the congas, you'll notice that right here, down the center of the drum head, you can actually see the spine of the animal, right? So this is a goat skin. We can see the spine marked here. This is the thickest part of the skin. We want that to be really dead center. And we want to keep our hands in a very close proximity to that. That way they're somewhat equidistant. Because as this head gets, as we move away from that, the skin gets thinner. So the most consistent spot we want to have is right here and sort of in this zone. So we've got the thickest part here, and we're playing just off that thickest part in terms of our playing spot. This will help because otherwise if we're playing on, say we're playing on the thick spot and the thin spot, we're going to get a really uneven sound. So by keeping it here, we're going to really sort of even out the tone of our both hands. Now, with this drum, another exercise that we could use, or another sound that we could use that's indicative of the djembe, is a ghost stroke. A ghost stroke is really just a touch or a timing stroke that happens on the drum. A lot of times this can be thought as just keeping time, but really it adds a really nice feel to the drum, and it's more of a soloistic idea. So what we'll do is a very simple exercise that'll work on a little bit on our ghost strokes and a little bit on our slap. We're going to break it down into 2 sections. The first section, or the main part of this groove, we're going to have doom doom, boom boom, bop bop, goom goom, boom boom, bop bop. So we'll have bass bass, tone tone, slap slap, bass bass, tone tone, slap slap. And we really want to think of that melody. We're going to fill in that melody with those ghost strokes. So I'll have. Notice the ghost strokes are barely touching. So if I left them out, we can still hear that same melody. So it's really important that we keep those ghost strokes as light as possible. So we're going to play this 3 times. On the 4th time, we're going to put a little bit of a turnaround. That way we switch up hands. We really want to think about that melody that we're creating on the djembe and not get caught up on which hand is playing the slap all the time. That way one hand doesn't get a little bit more dominant than the other in terms of our slap. So the 3rd time, we're going to play this little turnaround, all singles. We can start with either hand. So if I want to start with the bass, 1, 2, 3. On the 4th time, 1. Now I'm on the other hand. So to put this whole thing together, we'll have this. 1, 2, 3. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, come back around. If we want to really just work on our slaps, we can change that turnaround. We can extend it. So instead of just one time, let's do it 3 times. Always alternating hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this way we're really working on our slaps and our singles as we get faster. So we have our slaps, we have our ghosts, we have our technique coming a little bit off of this drum. In the next video, we'll look a little bit at bongos and see how this transfers to a much smaller head.